The manufacturing hall was silent, so silent that the hum of the massive overhead fans felt like thunder. Every engineer in the room had their eyes locked on Anderson Okoro, the billionaire founder of Anda Vehicle Manufacturing, AVM. He stood tall in his white flowing kaftan, his red cap tilted slightly, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Gentlemen," he said, his tone echoing off the metal walls, "we have built cars that won awards across Africa. We have delivered vehicles that earned us the trust of kings and presidents. But for 1 month, 1 whole month, we have failed to deliver the presidential car we were mandated to build." Heads dropped. Some engineers shuffled their feet, others avoided eye contact. The specifications were nearly impossible. A car that could withstand bullets, explosives, and extreme terrain, while remaining sleek and powerful. They had tried every design, every formula, every machine, but every prototype had failed. Anderson's voice trembled as he continued. "If we fail, AVM fails. Investors will flee. Competitors will laugh. The newspapers will write it in bold. Anda Vehicle Manufacturing could not deliver for the president. And that, my friends, would be the end of us." There was silence, the kind that eats into your chest. Then, from the back of the hall, a rough, broken voice cut through. "I can do it." Everyone froze. Anderson blinked. Slowly he turned, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A man stood at the doorway. His coat was black but torn and stained with mud. His hair was overgrown, his beard tangled and wild, like a man who had been lost in the wilderness for years. His eyes, however, burned with something the engineers had lost. Belief. Laughter broke out instantly. One of the engineers, tall and arrogant, clapped mockingly. "Security! Please remove this man. We are discussing serious matters, not listening to a madman." But Anderson didn't move. He studied the stranger, his lips tightening. "Wait," he said, raising his hand. "Let him speak." The hall erupted in whispers. "Sir, you can't be serious. This is madness. He's a tramp, not an engineer." Anderson ignored them. His instincts, sharp from years of surviving the brutal world of business, told him there was something here, something beyond what met the eye. "Come forward," Anderson said. The homeless man hesitated. The angry stares from the engineers nearly pushed him back. But he swallowed his fear and walked forward, each step slow and unsure. He reached the podium. Anderson handed him a red marker. "Here," Anderson said, his eyes piercing. "Show us." The man's hands trembled slightly as he took the red marker. For a second, he stared at the empty whiteboard like it was his final chance at life. Then his face hardened. He turned and began to draw. The engineers leaned closer, some smirking, others shaking their heads. But as the lines took shape, the smirks faded. The room grew silent. The man's hand moved with precision, not hesitation. In minutes, he sketched the outline of an SUV, rugged yet elegant. He added details of reinforced body panels, shock-absorbing wheels, and a multi-layered armored glass system. Then he shifted down, drawing the engine with astonishing detail. His explanation flowed smoothly, his voice steady. "This is how you achieve durability without losing speed," he said, his finger tracing the engine components. "Here, you integrate a hybrid cooling system for the armored layers, and this suspension will allow the car to withstand explosive impacts without overturning." When he stopped, silence swallowed the hall. The lead engineer, Jacob Smith, who had mocked him earlier, stared at the board with wide eyes. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking. How can he do this?" Anderson's face was unreadable. His heart pounded. He knew what he was looking at. This wasn't luck. This wasn't chance. This man had just solved in minutes what his team of celebrated engineers couldn't solve in a month. Anderson finally asked, his voice low but commanding, "Who are you?" The man dropped the marker, his shoulders sinking. He exhaled heavily, as though releasing years of pain. "My name is Sam Anamdi," he said, his voice breaking. "And once, I was an engineer." The hall gasped. Engineers exchanged glances. Anderson's eyes narrowed. Sam sat heavily in a chair, his voice trembling but firm. "I was the lead automotive engineer at a foreign car company in Port Harcourt. I was praised and awarded, but people who envied me plotted my fall. They faked my resignation, emptied my accounts, and ruined my life. The woman I was to marry left me, calling me a failure. My parents were gone. I had no one, no family, no hope. And so, I ended up here, on the streets, with nothing but memories of who I once was. A heavy silence filled the room. Tears glistened in the eyes of some. Jacob, the lead engineer, lowered his head in shame. Anderson, however, stepped forward. He extended his hand. "Sam Namdi," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "You have just saved this company from disgrace. From this day, you are no longer a homeless man. You are one of us." Sam's eyes widened, tears rolling down his dirt-stained cheeks. His trembling hand reached forward and took Anderson's. The hall erupted in applause. Engineers who had mocked him only moments earlier now rushed forward to shake his hand. Anderson turned to his assistant. "Prepare his employment letter immediately. This man belongs here." Sam couldn't hold it anymore. He covered his face and wept, his body shaking. For the first time in years, he felt human again. But as the applause thundered, Anderson's eyes narrowed. He had seen enough of the world to know that when a man rises from the ashes, enemies do not sleep. He looked at Sam and thought, "This man has a gift, but will the world allow him to keep it?" And that question would soon be answered, sooner than anyone in that hall could imagine. Sam Namdi has just been hired after shocking the billionaire and his engineers with his genius. But as he wipes his tears and holds his employment letter, a shadow from his past is already watching, waiting to strike. The following week, at Anda Vehicle Manufacturing, AVM, felt like a rebirth. The once dull factory now buzzed with energy. Engineers who had been close to giving up moved with fresh determination. Every conversation in the research lab carried excitement. Everyone was inspired by Sam Namdi, the homeless man, who had become their miracle. Sam, though nervous, quickly adapted. He spent hours at the design table, sleeves rolled up, hair trimmed now, his eyes burning with a new fire. His designs weren't just drawings, they were solutions. Anderson himself often visited the lab, watching Sam sketch engines or explain concepts to senior engineers who sat around him like students in a classroom. For the first time in weeks, Anderson slept peacefully. The presidential car project was back on track. Investors who had been worried were reassured after hearing whispers of a breakthrough. Yet, behind all the joy and progress, Sam carried scars, memories of betrayal that he tried hard to blur. One evening, as the sun painted the Lagos sky orange, Sam walked out of the factory cafeteria carrying a cup of coffee. Sitting at one of the tables was Sandra Coyote, one of AVM's youngest female engineers. She had been watching him quietly for days. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, smiling. Sam hesitated, then nodded. Sandra was bright-eyed, her voice gentle, and unlike many of the others, she had never mocked him when he first appeared. "You've shaken this whole place," she said, sipping her drink. "Everyone is talking about you. Even Anderson seems different around you." Sam chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I'm just doing what I was born to do. But it still feels strange, being here. After—" He stopped, his voice heavy. Sandra leaned closer. "After what?" Sam sighed. His eyes darkened. "After I lost everything, I had a fiancée, Rebecca. We were to marry. But the moment my career collapsed, she left me, called me a failure. That night was the night I stopped believing in love." Sandra's chest tightened at his words. She wanted to say something comforting, but before she could, Anderson walked past, smiling. "Sam," he said warmly, "we're reviewing the prototype tomorrow. Be ready. The president's people are flying in." Sam nodded, his heart racing. This was it, the test that would either prove his worth or crush him again. But as Anderson walked away and the engineers celebrated, another set of eyes watched from outside the factory gates. Hidden behind a tinted car window, Rebecca, Sam's former fiancée, clenched her fists. She had followed him for days, unable to believe what she heard. Sam, the man she had abandoned, the man she had mocked as a failure, was now rising again. Worse, she had heard whispers about Sandra. Jealousy burned inside her like acid. Her lips curled in a bitter sneer. "So, you think you can rise without me, Sam? You think you can find love again?" "No, not while I live." Beside her in the car, two rough-looking men nodded, waiting for her orders. Rebecca had already made her choice. If she couldn't have Sam, she would destroy him. The next morning, the presidential security officials arrived at the factory. They were stern, tall men in dark suits, their eyes hidden behind sunglasses. Anderson welcomed them personally. In the testing field, the prototype SUV stood gleaming under the sun. It was unlike any vehicle AVM had ever built. Reinforced body, thick glass, a body design that looked elegant yet unbreakable. Sam stood quietly at the side, his hands trembling slightly. Anderson placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Breathe, Sam. You've already won. Now let them see it." Bullets rattled against the SUV. The armored panels absorbed them without a dent. Explosives were placed nearby. The car withstood the shock, its tires gripping firmly. Even at top speed, the engine roared without faltering. When it ended, the officials exchanged glances and nodded. One of them turned to Anderson. "This car will serve the president well." The engineers erupted in cheers. Anderson's eyes glistened as he turned to Sam. "You saved us." But in the middle of the celebration, Sam felt a strange unease. His instincts told him this was only the beginning. He looked around, and for a fleeting second, he thought he saw a familiar face in the distance, a woman's face, watching from behind the gate. His heart stopped. Rebecca. That night, Sam couldn't sleep. He sat by the window of the small apartment Anderson had arranged for him, staring at the city lights. His phone buzzed. A message. The sender, unknown number. The text read, "Did you think I forgot you? Did you think you could just move on? Enjoy your victory, Sam. Soon, I'll take back what is mine." Sam's hand shook as he read the words. He knew that voice even without hearing it. Rebecca. But this wasn't just jealousy. It was a threat. Sam has achieved the impossible, delivering the presidential car and saving AVM's future. But his past has returned to haunt him. Rebecca, the woman who abandoned him, is back this time with revenge in her heart and dangerous allies by her side. The celebration at Anda Vehicle Manufacturing, AVM, was still in full swing. Newspapers carried the headline, "AVM unveils presidential car, a national triumph." Anderson Okoro became the face of innovation once again. But behind every smile he gave, his heart knew the truth. This victory belonged to Sam Namdi. Sam, however, walked through the factory corridors with mixed emotions. He should have been happy. He should have been proud. Yet the message he received the night before echoed in his mind like a curse. "Soon, I'll take back what is mine." He knew it was Rebecca. He knew she wouldn't forgive him for finding his footing again. That Friday evening, Sandra invited Sam to a quiet dinner at a garden bar not far from the factory. The air was warm, filled with the smell of grilled fish and roasted plantain. Fairy lights hung between palm trees, glowing softly. Sandra leaned on the table, her voice low. "You don't talk much these days. You've been distracted." Sam forced a smile. "I'm just thinking too much." "About the project?" she asked. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No. About the past. About someone I thought was gone forever." Sandra's eyes softened. She reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "Sam, you're not the man who lost everything anymore. You're the man who saved us all. Don't let ghosts steal that from you." Sam looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt warmth spread in his chest. He squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Sandra." But at that very moment, a camera clicked in the shadows. Across the street, Rebecca lowered her phone, her eyes dark with rage. Watching them laugh and share food was like pouring salt into an open wound. She whispered through clenched teeth, "You think she can replace me?" Never. Sam and Sandra's relationship continued to grow despite the threats from Rebecca, and one evening at the garden bar, Sam knelt on his knee and said, "Sandra, you've made me to believe in love and made me see that true love still exists. Will you marry me and allow us to spend the rest of our lives together?" Sandra's hand flew to her mouth. She couldn't hide the joy and said years with tears, stretching her hand for the diamond ring. 2 months later, they got married in an extravagant wedding, sponsored by Anderson, who was at the wedding with his wife, Monica. Anderson smiled with joy when he thought of where Sam was few months ago. Sam couldn't hide his joy, and eventually shed tears thinking about his journey and his life few months back. But as they danced and cut the cake in joy, Rebecca saw the back of the hall, burning with rage and thinking of his next move. "Sandra can't just come and take Sam away from me. No way. He can't, and I must stop her, she said and went out angrily. Sandra was heavily pregnant after 8 months of their wedding, and Sam was always around to support her even at work. But that night, Sam was busy at home, and Sandra left the factory late. She carried a bag of vegetables from the market, humming a soft tune as she drove her small Toyota down a quiet road. The streetlights flickered weakly. Suddenly, a black SUV screeched in front of her, blocking the way. 2 men jumped out, faces masked. Before she could scream, one smashed her window, yanked her door open, and dragged her out. Her bag of vegetables spilled across the road, tomatoes rolling into the gutter. Please, don't hurt me. I'm pregnant, Sandra cried. The men didn't listen. They shoved her into the back of their SUV and sped off into the night. At that exact moment, Sam was in his apartment, pacing restlessly. He dialed Sandra's number for the 3rd time. It rang unanswered. Then his phone buzzed. A message. His heart nearly stopped. It was a photo of Sandra clutching her belly, tied to a chair in a dark, empty building. Beside her stood Rebecca, her smile twisted with satisfaction. The caption read, "If you want her alive, you'll do exactly what I say." Sam's knees buckled. He grabbed his head in disbelief. No, this can't be happening. Hours later, Sam stood at the abandoned warehouse Rebecca had chosen. His chest pounded as he pushed the heavy doors open. Inside, the dim light revealed Sandra tied up, her eyes wide with fear. Rebecca stepped forward, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. She looked different, more dangerous now, her beauty sharpened by bitterness. "Hello, Sam," she said sweetly. "Did you miss me?" Sam's voice cracked with fury. "Rebecca, let her go. This isn't you." Rebecca laughed bitterly. "Oh, it's me, Sam, the woman who gave you her heart, only for you to rise without her. You think you can replace me with her?" She gestured sharply at Sandra. "No, you will divorce her and you'll marry me instead. Or..." She pulled a knife from her bag and pressed it against Sandra's neck. "She dies tonight," Sandra whimpered, clutching her pregnancy protectively, her eyes pleading with Sam not to give in. Sam's chest heaved. Every muscle in his body wanted to rush forward, but one wrong move could cost Sandra her life. He clenched his fists. "Rebecca, please, don't do this." Rebecca leaned closer, her voice trembling with madness. "You don't have a choice." At that moment, Sam's phone buzzed in his pocket. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "Who's that?" Sam prayed silently as he glanced down. It was Anderson. He had already informed him earlier, hoping for backup. Could it be? Were the police already here? Sam is trapped. Sandra's life and the life of the baby inside her are hanging by a thread in Rebecca's hands. The billionaire Anderson has been alerted, but will help arrive in time, or will Sam be forced to make the most painful choice of his life? The warehouse was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint squeak of rats scurrying across rusted iron beams. Sam stood frozen, his body tense like a coiled spring. His eyes locked on Rebecca's trembling hand, gripping the knife against Sandra's neck. Every second stretched into an eternity. Sandra's breath came in short gasps, her eyes locked on Sam's. She was pleading silently. "Don't give up. Don't let her win." Rebecca's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "Do you remember the night I walked away, Sam?" she asked, her voice low but sharp like glass. "Do you remember how you begged me to stay, how you cried, promising things would get better? You were nothing, a failure. I saved myself that day. And now, look at you." It wasn't not to low term that wide able late. It was not timer. Her voice cracked, torn between rage and regret. "You rose without me. You let her." She spat the word like poison. "Take what belongs to me. No, you will choose me again, Sam. Right here. Tonight. Or Sandra dies." Sam's chest heaved. His voice came out hoarse but steady. "Rebecca, you don't own me. You left. You killed us the day you walked away. I begged you, but you chose pride over love." Her face darkened. "Shut up," she screamed, pressing the blade tighter against Sandra's neck. Sandra winced, a thin red line appearing where the blade kissed her skin. Sam's knees weakened. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Don't hurt her. Whatever you want from me, I'll give it. Just don't hurt her." Rebecca's eyes softened for a brief second, the madness flickering into something almost human. but it was gone as quickly as it came. Then say it, she demanded. Say you'll marry me. Say she means nothing. Sam's jaw tightened. His lips parted to speak. Then, suddenly, there was a loud crash, shattered the air. The warehouse doors burst open, blinding beams of torchlights flooding the dark interior. Police dropped the weapon. Rebecca spun, startled, as armed officers in black tactical gear stormed in. The men she had hired tried to scatter, but they were quickly slammed to the ground, rifles pressed to their backs. Sam's heart raced. Relief surged through him. Anderson had kept his word. Rebecca shrieked, her grip tightening on Sandra. Don't come closer, I'll kill her. The officers froze, weapons trained on her. One of them, a tall man with a calm voice, stepped forward. Rebecca Nwosu, put down the knife. There's no escape. You're surrounded. But Rebecca only laughed, a chilling, broken sound. You think I care? You think prison scares me? He's mine. He was always mine. She pressed the knife harder, Sandra's sobs filling the room. Sam stepped forward, his voice trembling but loud enough to carry. Rebecca, look at me. Not her. Me. Her eyes flicked to him. Her pupils were wide, her breathing ragged. You're angry because you lost me, Sam said, slowly moving closer. But you didn't lose me to Sandra. You lost me to yourself the day you abandoned me. You chose greed. You chose pride. And now you're standing here with a knife to an innocent woman's throat. Rebecca's hand shook. Her lips quivered. For a moment, doubt flickered in her eyes. Sam kept going, his voice cracking with emotion. I loved you, Rebecca. More than anything. But love without trust is dead. I am not the man you left behind. And you. He pointed at her with trembling fingers. You are not the woman I once knew. For a second, silence blanketed the room. Even the officers seemed to hold their breath. Then Rebecca screamed, raising the knife in fury. A gunshot rang out. The knife clattered to the floor. Rebecca screamed, clutching her wrist. An officer had fired a precision shot, disabling her without killing her. The blade slid harmlessly away from Sandra. Sam rushed forward, falling to his knees beside Sandra, who collapsed into his arms, shaking uncontrollably. It's okay, he whispered, stroking her hair. You're safe now. I've got you. Sandra sobbed into his chest, her tears soaking his shirt. Rebecca writhed on the floor, shouting curses. You'll regret this, Sam. You'll regret betraying me. Her voice broke into sobs as officers dragged her up, cuffing her hands behind her back. The men she hired were shoved beside her, their faces pale with fear. Hours later, inside the police station, Rebecca sat in a cold cell, her once elegant hair disheveled. The madness in her eyes had faded, replaced by a hollow emptiness. The lead officer addressed Anderson, who had arrived with his wife Monica, both visibly shaken. Sir, with the evidence we've gathered, abduction, attempted murder, and conspiracy, she'll be facing a long sentence. Anderson nodded grimly. Do what you must. Let justice take its course. Sam sat quietly on a bench, Sandra's hand in his. She leaned against him, exhausted but alive. Anderson walked over, placing a firm hand on Sam's shoulder. You did well, Anderson said. You didn't break. You faced her down like a man. I'm proud of you. Sam's throat tightened. I almost lost her, he whispered, looking at Sandra. If you hadn't come in time. Anderson shook his head. No, Sam. If you hadn't kept her talking, if you hadn't been brave enough to stand there, we would have been too late. Sam's eyes welled up, and he nodded silently. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was packed. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, cameras flashing. The case of Rebecca Nwosu versus the state had captured the nation's attention. Rebecca stood in the dock, her face pale, her hands trembling. The judge's voice echoed across the hall. Having examined the overwhelming evidence against you, abduction, attempted murder, endangering the life of a pregnant woman, and threats of death, this court finds you guilty. You and your accomplices are hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison without the option of fine. The gavel slammed down. Rebecca screamed, collapsing as officers dragged her away. Her eyes met Sam's for the last time, filled not with love, but with a broken, bitter emptiness. Sandra squeezed Sam's hand tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sam closed his eyes, whispering a prayer of thanks. 5 days later, in the gentle glow of dawn, Sandra was rushed into the hospital maternity ward. After hours of labor, her cries gave way to the soft wails of a newborn baby boy. Sam stood by her side, tears streaming freely as the nurse placed the child in his arms. His tiny fists clenched, his eyes squeezed shut. "He's perfect," Sandra whispered weakly, her smile glowing with exhaustion and joy. Sam's chest shook with sobs as he kissed the baby's forehead. "Wilson," he whispered, "your name will be Wilson, because you will grow strong, and you will never let the world break you the way it tried to break me." Anderson and Monica stood at the doorway, smiling through their tears. The billionaire placed his arm around his wife. "This family, this is why I built AVM. For moments like this." Sam looked at the sleeping baby in his arms, then at Sandra. For the first time in years, his heart was full, not of fear, not of regret, but of hope. 19 years later, the years rolled by. Wilson grew into a brilliant young man, his mind sharp, his spirit unbreakable. At 19, he graduated from university as an aerodynamics engineer, top of his class. On his first day at AVM, he walked into the same factory that had once witnessed his father's rebirth. Sam stood beside Anderson, his eyes glistening with pride. As Wilson shook his father's hand and signed his employment papers, Sam whispered, his voice cracking with emotion, "You've just begun a journey I nearly lost. Carry it further than I ever could." Wilson smiled, hugging his father tightly. Anderson watched them, his heart swelling. "The future of AVM," he said softly. But even as laughter filled the hall, none of them knew that destiny was not done with the Namdi family. For in the shadows of Lagos, someone else was watching someone who carried an old grudge, waiting for the perfect time to strike. The AVM headquarters had changed over the years. What was once a sprawling warehouse filled with iron and grease had now become a world-class automotive hub. The walls gleamed with polished glass, the testing tracks stretched for miles, and the air inside was filled with the hum of machines mixed with the chatter of brilliant minds. At the heart of it all was Wilson Namdi, 19 years old, tall and confident, with the sharp eyes of an innovator. His first week as an aerodynamics engineer at AVM had been nothing short of magical. Everywhere he walked, engineers greeted him with admiration, not because he was Sam Namdi's son, but because he was brilliant in his own right. But while Wilson basked in the glow of fresh beginnings, danger was quietly circling him, like a hawk watching prey from the clouds. One humid evening, Wilson was in the design lab, sketching a new lightweight engine frame. His fingers moved swiftly, his thoughts racing ahead of the paper. Then his phone buzzed with a message. At first he smiled, expecting it to be from his parents. But when he unlocked the screen, his smile froze. The message read, "Your father destroyed my life. Now it's your turn to pay." Attached was a photo. Wilson's mother, Sandra, was leaving the AVM parking lot, unaware that a camera had caught her. Wilson's chest tightened. His hand trembled as he whispered, "No, not again." He remembered the stories his father had told him about Rebecca, the woman who had nearly torn their family apart. She was supposed to be locked away, but could she have reached him even from prison? Or was there someone new, someone even more dangerous? Wilson's instinct screamed. Whoever it was, they were close. That night at home, Wilson sat quietly at the dining table, the message burning in his mind. Sam noticed his son's silence. "Wilson," Sam said gently, "something is troubling you." Wilson looked up at his father, the man who had risen from homelessness to become a legend in the automotive world. He wanted to keep the threat to himself, but the fear was too heavy. "Dad," Wilson said, his voice shaky. Someone is watching us. They sent me a message. They know, Mom. They said you destroyed their life, and now I have to pay." Sam's fork clattered onto his plate. His face darkened with memories of Rebecca's madness, of the night she nearly killed Sandra. He swallowed hard. "Wilson," he said firmly, "listen to me. The moment you stand for something great, enemies will rise. I learned that the hard way. But you cannot let fear decide your future. Whoever this is, we will face them together." And as they was not one, Sandra reached across the table, holding her son's hand. "You are not alone, Wilson. Never forget that." Wilson nodded. But deep inside, he knew this wasn't just his father's fight anymore. This was his. Days later, AVM was set to unveil Wilson's first project, a prototype engine frame that promised lighter weight and higher speed without compromising durability. The entire board of investors was coming, even government officials were expected. It was the biggest day of Wilson's young career, but that morning, as the sun rose over Lagos, a van parked quietly outside the AVM testing grounds. Inside, 3 men checked their weapons, their faces hidden by masks. Their leader scrolled through photos of Wilson on his phone, muttering, "We take him today, alive if possible, dead if he resists." By noon, the investors filled the hall, their voices buzzing with curiosity. Anderson, now older and slower, sat proudly beside Sam and Sandra, all eyes waiting for Wilson. Wilson stood at the podium, nervous but determined. He tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for trusting me with this project. I present to you a design that could change the face of Nigerian automotive engineering forever." Applause filled the hall as the cover was pulled from the sleek prototype engine. The polished steel reflected the lights like a mirror. Investors leaned forward in awe, but just as Wilson began to explain the design, the doors of the hall slammed open. Men in masks stormed in, rifles raised. Chaos erupted. Investors screamed. Engineers dove under tables. "Everybody down." One of the gunmen barked, his eyes locked on Wilson. "You, come with us." Sam jumped to his feet, shielding his son. "Over my dead body." The gunman sneered. "That can be arranged." Police sirens wailed in the distance, but time was running out. The attackers grabbed Wilson, yanking him from the podium. Sandra screamed, trying to run toward her son, but another gunman shoved her back. "Take your hands off him," Sam roared, tackling one of the men. They crashed into the prototype, sparks flying as equipment toppled. Sam fought with the strength of a man defending his blood, but age slowed him down. The attacker shoved him aside, raising his rifle. Wilson's heart pounded. He had seconds to act. He remembered his father's words, "You cannot let fear decide your future." Summoning every ounce of courage, Wilson swung the heavy metal cover of the engine into the gunman's chest. The man staggered back, gasping. Investors scrambled out of the hall, shouting for help. The leader raised his gun to fire at Wilson, but suddenly, a single shot cracked through the air. The bullet hit the ground inches from the attacker's foot. "Police, drop your weapons." The hall flooded with armed officers. Within seconds, the attackers were surrounded. The gunmen hesitated, then dropped their rifles one by one. Sam rushed forward, pulling Wilson into his arms. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, scanning his son from head to toe. Wilson shook his head, still trembling. "I'm fine." "But Dad, they wanted me." "Not you. Not the company. Me." Sam's heart clenched. Whoever was behind this wasn't just after revenge against him anymore. They wanted his son. Hours later, at the police station, the leader of the gunmen was interrogated. His lips were tight, his eyes filled with hatred. "You think you've won?" He sneered at Sam and Wilson through the glass window of the observation room. "You don't even know who sent us." "Then tell us," Sam said, his voice calm but cold. The man leaned forward, his grin twisted. "You remember Rebecca? She may be rotting in prison, but her sister isn't. And she's worse, much worse." Sam's blood ran cold. Sandra covered her mouth in shock. Wilson clenched his fists. The man laughed. "She's coming for all of you, and nothing will stop her." That night, back at home, the family gathered in the living room. The weight of the revelation pressed on them like a storm cloud. Wilson looked at his father, his eyes burning with determination. "Dad, I can't live in fear. If Rebecca's sister wants a fight, then I'll face her. I'm not a boy anymore. I'm your son. I have to protect this family too." Sam's throat tightened. Pride and fear collided inside him. He placed both hands on Wilson's shoulders. "Then we face it together. This family has fought shadows before, and we survived. We'll survive again." Sandra leaned in, her voice steady. "We've come too far to be broken now. No matter who rises against us, love will keep us standing." Wilson nodded, his heart pounding. For the first time, he wasn't just Sam Namdi's son. He was part of the fight. Weeks later, Wilson stood alone at the AVM testing track late at night, working on his design. The moonlight bathed the asphalt in silver. He wiped sweat from his brow, unaware that a pair of eyes watched him from the shadows. A woman's voice whispered from the darkness, "You're even smarter than your father. No wonder Rebecca loved him so much. But soon, Wilson, you'll belong to me." Her laugh echoed in the night as Wilson turned, his heart aching. Wilson has stepped into his father's shoes, but a new enemy has emerged, Rebecca's sister, more dangerous and vengeful than ever. The Namdi family's legacy and AVM's future stand on the edge of another storm. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.